You ever start rewatching a childhood cartoon just for nostalgia, and then you're 4 episodes deep, emotionally invested, and wondering how a kid's show just handed you a midlife crisis? Yeah, that's Spider-Man, the animated series, 1994. This was Peter Parker drowning in problems bigger than Kingpin's ego. Betrayals, heartbreak, mad scientists, and plot twists so wild, they'd make a soap opera jealous. And it all kicked off in New York City. From above, New York City looked like it always did. Loud, bright, alive. But the thing about the city that never sleeps, it has nightmares. And those nightmares usually live underground. Down in the subway, a worker was happily bragging about his cozy in winter, cool in summer gig, blissfully unaware that his day was about to be ruined by something that looked like it had crawled out of Jurassic Park with a hangover. A flash of red eyes, a blur of claws, and that was it. Meanwhile, topside, Peter Parker was having his own version of Monday broke, tired and getting yelled at by J. Jonah Jameson. This time, the order was simple. Go photograph the giant lizard causing havoc in the subway. The bounty was $1,000. For Peter, that was like winning the lottery, except without all the annoying relatives suddenly texting you. But there was a problem. Peter already had a good guess who that lizard might be. Dr. Curt Connors, brilliant scientist, former professor, and the guy who once decided it'd be a fun idea to use lizard DNA to regrow his lost arm. Spoiler, it wasn't. At Connors' lab, with assistant Deborah Whitman looking worried in the background, Curt proudly showed off his latest invention, the neogenic recombinator. It was a glorified DNA blender. Unfortunately, Curt had already taken it for a test drive. On himself. Now he was part man, part reptile, and all bad idea. And because he was fresh out of rational thinking, the newly christened Lizard kidnapped his own wife, planning to finish his cure project, which in true villain fashion would turn the entire city into giant lizards. Because nothing says family man like forcing your kid to live in a city full of scaly strangers. Spider-Man tracked him into the tunnels. Fists flew, tails swung, and mid-fight someone shouted, "Billy!" their son's name. That one word cut through the monster, bringing Curt back just enough for Peter to shut down the plan and save the day. Back at the Bugle, Peter handed in the photos, collected his cash, and watched Eddie Brock crash and burn, trying to take credit without proof. Eddie's humiliation was the kind of thing that sticks, festers, grows. But Peter didn't have time to savor it.
Something's wrong.
His spider sense started buzzing. Now came tiny drones that moved like they'd been studying his fight tapes. They herded him like prey. And for once, Spider-Man wasn't the one in control. The mastermind was Spencer Smythe, showing off his shiny new spider slayers to Norman Osborn and Jameson. Rich guys with too much free time and an unhealthy obsession with ruining Peter's life. The crown jewel was a giant mech called Black Widow, built for one purpose: take down Spider-Man. Scenes cut to a high society gala at the Hardy Mansion. Peter's snapping photos, Felicia's being her usual charming self, and Flash Thompson sulking in the corner. Then Black Widow crashes the party. Peter suits up. Meanwhile, Flash, in a Spider-Man costume for the guests, gets mistaken for the real deal. Eddie Brock sees his chance for glory. The fight's brutal. The robot counters Peter's webs, predicts his moves, but Flash's unintentional interference gives Peter the opening to win. When Eddie unmasks Spider-Man live on camera, revealing Flash instead, the newsroom laughs him out the door. Eddie walks away furious, and the first real spark of the venom we know is coming. Things only escalate. Smythe's dead. Or so everyone thought. Now his son's taken up the Spider Slayer project with Kingpin's funding. Peter's fighting machine's stronger than ever. And this time there's a bomb strapped to his arm. Peter survives, barely disarming the bomb and taking down the robots. But it costs him. Oscorp facilities burn, Kingpin slips away untouched, and Peter returns home to a date with Mary Jane that he forgot. Her smile fades and the guilt hits harder than any supervillain punch. Then, just when you think Peter might catch a break, Felicia Hardy calls. Date night at her mansion. But before dessert, Doctor, Octopus crashes in and kidnaps her. Otto Octavius, Peter's childhood science camp hero, now twisted by bitterness and mechanical arms. A ransom follows, a TV standoff. And soon Jameson's a hostage too. Peter appeals to the man Otto used to be. It almost works. Almost. But in the final showdown inside an abandoned rocket factory, Peter learns a truth that's haunted every fight since. Sometimes you can't save the man, only stop the monster. And the thing about New York? It doesn't let you breathe. One day you're saving astronauts, the next you're framed for grand theft nuclear. The city was still buzzing over the Prometheum X mess when everything started going sideways again. This time in bulk. Kingpin decided subtlety was overrated and assembled a dream team of Spider-Man's worst nightmares. Dr. Octopus, Mysterio, Chameleon, Rhino, and Shocker. Add in Scorpion for that extra pinch of I hate your guts, and you've got the Insidious Six. Their mission is to bring Spider-Man down hard, courtesy of Kingpin's checkbook and Smythe's tech. It was the villain equivalent of the Avengers, minus the morals, teamwork, or therapy. The Six didn't just come at him one by one, they hit in waves. Mysterio's illusions blurred the streets, Chameleon made it impossible to tell friend from foe, and Shocker's blasts rattled him to the bone. The final straw? They took Aunt May's house hostage. Well, technically her neighborhood, but still. That's a line you don't cross. Outnumbered and low on stamina, Peter had to retreat for the first time in a long time. And retreating is not a thing he's good at. But Peter's bigger battle was brewing inside. The symbiote was changing him. Sleepwalking in the suit, waking up mid-swing without remembering leaving bed, snapping at MJ, threatening crooks like a mob enforcer. Then came the breaking point. During a rooftop fight with Shocker, Peter dangled him over the edge, rage boiling up like he was ready to drop him. His own voice sounded alien in his head, harsher, meaner. That's when he knew. It was using him. Dr. Connors confirmed it. Alien parasite, permanent bond. The longer it stayed, the harder it'd be to remove. Peter tried, but the suit clung like it had been waiting for this moment its whole life. Time for the church bells, literally. In a midnight struggle, Peter fought the symbiote under the ringing of a massive cathedral bell. The vibrations tore through it, breaking the bond while tearing Peter apart in the process. The suit peeled away, writhing like a wounded animal, and found Eddie Brock waiting below. Broken, furious, desperate, Eddie didn't fight it. He embraced it. And with that, Venom was born. Now Spider-Man was facing someone who knew everything. His strength, his weaknesses, his identity. Venom wasn't out to rob banks or take over the world. He was out to ruin Peter's life. Completely. The first clash was a nightmare. Peter couldn't hit him. Venom anticipated every move. Couldn't hide. Venom could stalk him without triggering spider sense. Every fight left Peter more rattled. Every encounter felt like a game of cat and mouse where he was the mouse. And the cat had fangs. But Peter's greatest strength has never been brute force. It's thinking on his feet. He outsmarted Venom with sonic vibrations again, forcing a retreat. Peter Parker always thought the worst thing about being Spider-Man was the bruises. Turns out it's the waiting. Waiting for the next villain to make a move. Waiting for the phone call that changes your night from quiet patrol to emergency rooftop cage match. Waiting for your DNA to finish deciding whether you're going to be a slightly taller Peter Parker or a science lab horror story. Because yeah, the mutation is still there, humming under his skin like a bad drum solo. His powers aren't gone anymore, but they're unstable. One day he can leap 5 stories without breaking a sweat. The next day his web shooters misfire and he faceplants into a dumpster. That's the kind of performance inconsistency you really don't want in superheroing. And it couldn't come at a worse time. The city is basically a playground for the worst people alive. The Insidious Six are still lurking in the shadows, licking their wounds after their last failed alliance. Kingpin's empire is holding together, but it's like a game of Jenga where every block is a crime boss with an ego problem. Meanwhile, Peter's personal life is a train wreck in slow motion. Felicia Hardy's clearly moved on, spending more time with Michael Morbius, the mysterious genius type, who makes Peter look like a guy whose most impressive skill is reheating pizza. Mary Jane's career is taking off, but their conversations feel shorter every time. And Aunt May? Well, after being kidnapped and terrorized, she's still shaken. She insists she's fine, but Peter can see it in her eyes. She's scared for him in a way that no reassurance can touch. Then, because this is Peter Parker, the universe decides to pile on. Reports start trickling in about a creature terrorizing the docks. Big, fast, with claws that leave marks deep enough to make Wolverine jealous. Spider-Man swings in expecting another overgrown lizard situation, but no, this is something new. Here comes Michael Morbius, looking pale, twitchy, and just a bit too defensive about what kind of experiments he's been running. His research into neogenetics has gone sideways. Morbius doesn't want to hurt anyone. At first. But the thirst is real, and soon Peter finds himself in the worst kind of fight. Every clash is personal, every punch a reminder that this is a man, not a monster, until the line blurs and even Peter starts to wonder. But if Morbius is the immediate problem, he's not the biggest one. The real storm is still brewing behind the scenes. Late at night, perched above the city, Peter admits something he's never said out loud. He's scared. Not of dying, but of changing into something unrecognizable. Of waking up one day and realizing Peter Parker doesn't exist anymore. The uncertainty gnaws at him until he does something desperate. He heads to Xavier's mansion. If anyone can figure out a mutation problem, it's the X-Men, right? Except, not exactly. The welcome is about as warm as a New York winter. Rogue tosses him a wink, Wolverine tosses him a growl, and Xavier offers him acceptance, not a cure. The message is simple. Live with it. But Peter's not here for a self-love seminar, and he's here because he's turning into something apocalyptic. And embrace who you are sounds like a joke when who you are might eat someone. Meanwhile, at the Brand Corporation, Herbert Landon is selling genetic progress to the public while secretly plotting mutant genocide. His weapon of choice is a formula stolen from Hank McCoy's research. Beast and Peter connect over shared fears. Two brilliant men staring down the possibility of becoming monsters. But the quiet moment doesn't last. At a Brand conference, the Hobgoblin crashes the party. Spider-Man keeps the ceiling from collapsing on everyone's heads, and Beast gets kidnapped. Wolverine picks up the trail, and before long, he and Spidey are busting into Landon's lab. What they find is nightmare fuel, tech designed to wipe mutants off the map. Then, chaos hits the fast-forward button. Hobgoblin hacks the system, steals Landon's research on a CD-ROM, and deletes everything else. In the madness, Landon falls into his own machine and mutates into an electricity-draining giant. Irony loves company. The X-Men swoop in. Rogue wrangles Landon with cables, and his telekinetic assistant keeps the Blackbird from crashing. Landon collapses, his crusade over, but the city barely takes a breath before another storm rolls in. Michael Morbius. Brilliant, charming, and secretly swiping Peter's blood from a lab. His noble goal is to cure a disease back home. His method is bat DNA and a neogenic machine. One bad decision later and he's a plasma-craving vampire. By day, Morbius reverts to human. By night, he hunts. Felicia Hardy grows closer to him, brushing off Peter's warnings as jealousy. Peter, seeing Morbius as a tragic mirror of himself, tries to help. But when his own mutation accelerates, things spiral fast. Peter Parker no longer exists, he says, lost in pain and transformation. The city turns against the monstrous Spider-Man. MJ and Aunt May are frantic. Here comes Kraven, summoned by Mariah Crawford, now on a mission of redemption. Meanwhile, a starving Morbius seeks out Felicia, more lost than ever. Flash Thompson stumbles into Peter's path, and for one flicker of a moment, the monster hesitates. That hesitation saves him. In the final showdown, Kraven fights not to kill, but to hold Peter long enough for Mariah's antidote to work. And it does. Slowly, painfully, Peter's human again. But the scars, inside and out, aren't going anywhere. So, if you grew up on this series, or just want the full story behind the show that shaped a generation of Spidey fans, hit that like button before we swing in. And if you think you already know what happens, stick around. I guarantee there's at least one jaw-drop moment you forgot. Now another mystery stalks the streets, but this time it's Morbius, back from the shadows. Only now the man is gone. What's left is the monster. The hunger is all-consuming and his prey are college students. Flash Thompson barely escapes with his life, but the attack sends the city into a panic spiral. The whispers start up again. Maybe Spider-Man isn't a hero. Maybe he's the threat. And just when things couldn't get more chaotic, In steps Blade. The man is basically a walking leather jacket. All grit, all edge, and with zero patience for misunderstood monsters. To Blade, Morbius is beyond saving. Peter sees a chance for redemption. What follows is a philosophical street fight, mercy versus mercy kill. Thanks to Blade's gruff mentor, Whistler, we get the backstory. Blade's a Dhampir, a half-human, half-vampire that is immune to sunlight, immune to crosses, immune to basically everything but his own tragic past. And vampires are not mystical demons in this universe. They're genetic mutations lurking in the corners of the world, which for Peter is somehow both comforting and deeply unsettling. Meanwhile, Felicia Hardy is drowning in guilt. It was her blood that triggered Michael's transformation. Sure, he made his own choices. But try telling her that at 3 a.m. when she's replaying every moment in her head. She makes a vow. She'll help him, Blade be damned. Things explode when Morbius attacks the neogenic lab. Blade, Peter, and the vampire crash together in a fight that feels less like good versus evil and more like 3 ticking time bombs colliding. Morbius escapes again. But Whistler drops the bombshell, and Morbius isn't the only one. There are more vampires out there. If they unite, humanity's toast. The hunt for Morbius turns into a late-night tour of New York's back alleys. Guided by Blade's vampire compass, Spider-Man tries to stop Michael from getting the neogenic recombinator chip. Naturally, Morbius wins this round, slipping past the cops and Peter both. Detective Terry Lee, who used to think vampire was just a Halloween costume, is now fully in the know. Blade takes her to his base, where she sees the human side of him, injecting serum to keep his own bloodlust under control. For a moment, the hunter's mask drops. Morbius, meanwhile, sets his sights on Aunt May. Peter's double-life phrase. Protect his aunt, or save Felicia from diving headfirst into the darkness. Mary Jane chooses this exact moment to say she's done. When Peter hesitates, she walks. Relationship over. And then Morbius crosses the last line, kidnapping Felicia. He wants to turn her into his queen of the night. She refuses, breaking whatever was left of their bond. He powers up with the recombinator, mutating into something far worse than a vampire. From here, it's one disaster to the next. Adrian Toombs, aka Vulture, goes youth hunting with stolen tech, accidentally sucking decades out of Peter until our hero is an arthritic, white-haired shadow of himself. Nobody recognizes him, nobody helps him. It's Dr. Connors and some science trickery that restore him, and finally end the mutation nightmare that's haunted him since Season 2. But there's no rest. Mary Jane disappears without a trace. Dr. Octopus returns with new toys and even steals Peter's memories. It takes a little girl named Tina and her unshakable belief in Spider-Man to snap him out of Otto's control. And just when Peter thinks he's earned one quiet night, Norman Osborn blows up half of Oscorp, vanishes, and re-emerges as the Green Goblin. The twist is, he's not gunning for Spider-Man. He's holding a personal vendetta trial against his own board of directors. By the time it's over, Norman claims amnesia and hands the company to Harry. Peter Parker's life was finally starting to look, well, not great, but less like a burning dumpster. Then came Fisktronics. Big paycheck, cutting-edge tech, and Richard Fisk himself offering a job like it was a thank you gift for saving his dear old dad, Wilson Fisk. But let's be honest, when has a gift from the Kingpin's family ever been anything but a poisoned apple? It doesn't take long for the mask to slip. One routine security check later, Peter's jumped by agents waving accusations of military espionage. The proof is a disc conveniently found in his possession. Officer Terry Lee and Federal Agent Susan Choi haul him off before he can say, "I don't even like floppy disks." Then there's Matt Murdock, defense attorney by day, daredevil by night, and the first person who actually believes Peter's innocent. Together, they start unraveling a setup so elaborate, it could only be courtesy of Wilson Fisk himself, complete with a fake rescue attempt to make Peter look even guiltier. Kingpin lays it all out for him in person. He needs a fall guy, and Peter is perfect. And just to add insult to injury, he locks Peter in a room with no ventilation. Daredevil saves him just in time, and over rooftops and close calls, they bond. Matt sharing his own origin story, his father's death, the accident that blinded him, and the grueling training that made him the man without fear. Meanwhile, Aunt May collapses from the stress. Mary Jane tries to keep Anna Watson calm, and Peter doubles down on proving his innocence. He and Daredevil both infiltrate Fisktronics, nearly knock each other's heads off before realizing they are on the same side, and Peter finally gets the data to clear his name. Only problem is that the building catches fire. Peter tosses the drive to Matt and tells him to run. Then, gut punch. Aunt May's in critical condition. Peter, still technically a fugitive, risks everything to see her. But the woman helping him escape is not Anna Watson, the chameleon in disguise. The disc is stolen, and Kingpin's plan is back on track. What follows is an alliance forged in fire. Peter and Daredevil storm Fisk's stronghold, take down Richard Fisk, Chameleon, and the corrupt Susan Choi. Peter walks free. Kingpin, of course, gets away with a fake apology and 0 jail time. Barely a moment later, Peter's blindsided. Harry and Mary Jane are engaged. No time to unpack that emotional grenade because Alistair Smythe is calling, begging for help against Kingpin. Peter shows up only to meet the ultimate slayer, a cyborg Smythe built as himself. Madame Web yanks Peter into another dimension mid-chaos for a cryptic learn the why, not just the how lecture, while Kingpin wonders why Smythe's suddenly acting like a man with a conscience. Turns out memories of his father are clawing through his programming. At an Oscorp event, Smythe attacks Norman Osborn and abducts Harry and Mary Jane. Peter discovers Spencer Smythe is alive, cryo-frozen, and when Alistair learns the truth, he turns on Kingpin. Then comes the darkness. Cletus Cassidy, bombs, chaos. Eddie Brock, trapped in Ravencroft, takes a deal from Baron Mordo to serve Dormammu. Venom returns. The symbiote reproduces, and Mordo hands the spawn to Cassady. Carnage is born. Pure chaos in red. Spider-Man teams up with War Machine, then even Venom himself, in a battle that's part superhero slugfest, part horror movie. Carnage is finally dragged into an interdimensional portal, with Venom sacrificing himself to keep him there. Peter barely has time to breathe before Hobgoblin and Green Goblin blow up Felicia Hardy's engagement party, turning it into goblin-on-goblin warfare. Hobgoblin ends up trapped in another dimension. Norman, now completely consumed by his goblin persona, gets the time dilation accelerator and swears to annihilate his enemies one by one. And if you think that's the end, you've clearly never met the Green Goblin. Peter's at his lowest. Madame Web appears, dangling destiny in his face, but he's had it. With Mary Jane by his side, he thinks maybe, just maybe, he can live a normal life. But in the shadows, Norman Osborn is slipping deeper into madness. The Green Goblin persona is steering the wheel. And now that he knows Peter's secret, every street corner feels like a trap. Peter's spider sense starts glitching like a static signal. At Harry's party, Norman sidles up, tossing out jabs that are just vague enough to be deniable but sharp enough to make Peter sweat. In a panic, Peter overcharges his web cartridge to spark a distraction. Except it sets the backyard on fire, and without his suit, he takes a brutal beating before limping home. The message is clear. Osborn can get to him anytime. Soon Aunt Anna collapses from goblin gas, and Mary Jane vanishes. Kidnapped. Peter storms out for one final fight. The battle is vicious, every punch laced with years of hate. Then Mary Jane falls into an interdimensional vortex. He reaches, but she's gone. Madame Web refuses to help. Peter quits. Meanwhile, Robbie Robertson wakes up framed for murder, sentenced to 15 years. His son blames Spider-Man. In a wild twist, J. Jonah Jameson resurrects his old alias, Jigsaw Jameson, to dig through the criminal underworld. Turns out the whole thing was a Kingpin setup, with Tombstone and Richard Fisk tangled in the mix. Despite his grief, Peter puts the mask back on to help. Robbie is freed, and for the first time, Jameson admits Spider-Man's worth. But there's no rest. Dr. Octopus blackmails Anastasia Hardy over a stolen fortune. Felicia Hardy overhears, is stunned. Peter digs deeper and learns the original thief, the cat, is Felicia's father, John Hardesky, now locked in a shield cell. As a child, he memorized the super soldier formula that created Captain America. Kingpin wants it. He sends Chameleon to swap Hardesky with a fake, then kidnaps the real one. Felicia is injected with the serum, becoming Black Cat. She reunites with her father at the hideout. He begs her to escape, but she won't. Teaming with Spider-Man, she destroys the formula and fights her way out. Hardesky disappears to keep his family safe. Peter, still haunted by Mary Jane's loss, spirals until Craven resurfaces. But it's not Craven causing havoc. It's Mariah Crawford, mutated after he tried to cure her illness with his serum. She embraces the beast she's become, and Craven chooses to stay by her side. As Peter wrestles with whether the fight is worth it, Morbius returns from hibernation, revived by Deborah Whitman and Clay. Felicia cancels her trip to face him, but Landon and Shocker abduct Morbius, wanting to exploit neogenic tech. Miriam, an ancient vampire and Blade's mother, takes control of the situation, aiming to create an army. In the chaos, Blade confronts Miriam, torn between blood and duty. She escapes, but the danger is contained. For now. Felicia decides to stay Black Cat, chasing her own mission. And then Harry Osborn starts hearing his father's voice. Not the man, the goblin. It leads him to a hidden Oscorp lair where a secret room waits behind a sliding sink. Inside is the goblin's full arsenal. Harry steps inside, and in that moment, he stops being Harry Osborn. He becomes the goblin. Peter's attempt at normal life with Liz literally blows up in his face. An explosion rocking the street, debris flying, and Liz barely hanging on as Peter pulls her to safety. The style of the attack is a new green goblin. Peter starts piecing things together, and every clue points in one direction: Harry Osborn. But before he can act, the Punisher storms into the picture, convinced Peter is the goblin in disguise and somehow tied to Mary Jane's disappearance. Peter denies it, but Frank Castle does have proof. And lately, Peter's been looking shady even to friends. Desperate, Peter breaks into the Osborn mansion and finds a laptop mapping goblin hideouts all over New York. That's all the confirmation he needs. Harry's gone full goblin. Peter's on the hunt, but the Punisher is glued to his trail, convinced he's hiding something. Meanwhile, Harry's following his father's voice like gospel. The mission is to destroy Spider-Man. And they'll be together again. The showdown happens where Norman Osborn fell. Harry's on a new glider, rage burning. Punisher joins the chaos. Peter's caught between saving his friend and staying alive. In the end, history repeats. Harry falls. Peter's wrecked. Not again. But then, Mary Jane returns, confused. She tells Peter she loves him and he just holds her. For a moment, there's hope. That's when a pirate-themed masquerade at the Bugle turns into a robot invasion. Mysterio crashes the party, sending guests running. Spider-Man saves Jonah, plants a tracker, and uncovers a chilling connection. Miranda Wilson, an actress thought dead after a filming accident, has been working with Mysterio. MJ, now acting in Miranda's old project, starts hearing voices at the abandoned Wonder Studios. She vanishes. Spidey confronts Mysterio in prison. Beck warns him there's worse ahead. Turns out Beck's been cutting deals with Kingpin for Smythe's simulacrum tech. Their goal is to replace MJ with Miranda's mind. The plan collapses, and in a rare moment of vulnerability, Beck admits it could never work. He just wanted to save what was left of her. In a final act, Miranda overloads the system. Beck stays, choosing to die with her. Shaken, Peter proposes to MJ. She says yes. Dr. Connors is tapped to walk her down the aisle until mutated lizard creatures abduct him, calling him father. Turns out they're born from a sewer experiment gone wrong. Connors mutates again, torn between his human side and his children. Margaret, MJ, and Deborah Whitman join forces, reprogramming a weapon to heal rather than kill. In the final clash, Connors regains control, the creatures are cured, and the day is saved. By 3 women, no powers required. Peter visits Aunt May, who gives him her and Uncle Ben's wedding rings. Meanwhile, Harry's therapy sessions blur Peter, Norman, and Spider-Man into one nightmare. When MJ visits with Liz and announces she's marrying Peter, Harry smiles. But inside, something breaks. Norman's voice pushes him back into the goblin suit. He allies with Silvermane and Smythe to hit Kingpin, but crashes Peter and MJ's wedding instead. Black Cat joins the fight. Liz pleads with Harry, and he surrenders, returning to Ravencroft. The wedding goes on. Jonah even gives Peter a car. Then Nick Fury shows up. Kingpin's resurrected the Insidious Six. Peter's hunt for his parents' past leads to S.H.I.E.L.D., Russia, and the truth. Richard and Mary Parker were heroes, not traitors, trying to stop a Nazi weapon. The trail ends in Chernobyl, where Kingpin plans to unleash that weapon. Spidey faces Shocker, Vulture, and Doc Ock before Silver Sable blows in. The real mastermind is Commissar Kragoff, the Red Skull's son, ready to finish his father's work. And Peter's about to find out that some battles change the world. The base in Chernobyl is falling apart, radiation flooding every corridor, alarms screaming. Peter and Silver Sable barely make it out alive, but the weapon is still in the wrong hands. Back in New York, Peter finally sits Aunt May down and tells her everything. The truth about his parents, their sacrifices, the danger they faced. For once, she doesn't just see her boy in trouble, she sees the son of heroes. And then comes the buried history lesson no one asked for but everyone needs. The 6 American warriors, W-taught legends powered by unstable super soldier serum, and a set of rings that could unlock Project Doomsday, a weapon too dangerous to ever exist. Captain America himself made the ultimate sacrifice to stop it, scattering the keys across the country. Peter's pride turns bittersweet when he learns his parents were saboteurs trying to stop the weapon's creation. That's when Kingpin makes his move, stealing 2 keys, and the fight comes right to Peter's front door. Keen Marlowe, frail but unshakable, reveals he's actually the Destroyer, the last surviving warrior. He dies defending a hidden key, leaving Peter with not just the ring, but a legacy. Keys keep vanishing. Omar Mosley is actually the real Black Marvel. The surviving veterans suit up for one last run, but the Insidious Six and the Red Skull's son, Kragoff, crash the party. And then the real nightmare. Red Skull himself returns. The rescue is Captain America, alive, leading Silver Sable's Wild Pack. In a final battle that feels like history trying to repeat itself, the heroes shut down Doomsday. But Red Skull unveils his ace, turning his own son into Electro, a walking atomic bomb. S.H.I.E.L.D. falls in minutes. Peter pulls off the impossible, luring Electro into an energy vortex. But Cap is trapped inside forever, choosing honor over escape. And just when Peter thinks it's over, the Beyonder shows up, whole planet turned into a war zone, villains like Doc Ock, Doom, and the Red Skull on one side, Peter forced to build his own ragtag Avengers on the other, Captain America, Iron Man, Storm, the Fantastic Four, even a rehumanized Lizard for a hot minute. It's moral gut checks. Felicia Hardy lashes out at Peter for dragging her into cosmic nonsense. Blade faces his vampire mother. Reed Richards has to babysit clashing egos while giant alien worms try to eat them. And then Doom grabs the Beyonder's power and crowns himself a god. It all ends in betrayal, hubris, and the Beyonder erasing everyone's memory. Except Peter's. He comes back to a wrecked New York and faces something worse than any villain. Spider Carnage, a symbiote-infected version of himself trying to nuke the multiverse. Madam Web sends him on the ultimate crossover, recruiting alternate Spider-Men. They save worlds, lose friends, and Peter learns the Mary Jane he's loved was a clone all along. In the final act, Spider Carnage brings in an alternate universe's Uncle Ben to reach the last sliver of good in Spider Carnage. It works. Carnage sacrifices himself, and then Peter gets one last swing in a world where he's just a comic book character, alongside Stan Lee himself. And that's the 1994 Spider-Man saga. If that sent you straight back to your childhood couch, drop a like so Spidey knows you're still rooting for him. And if you want more deep dives into the wildest superhero storylines ever animated, hit subscribe, because the next one might just top this in pure insanity.